Peace and blessings to everybody that is watching or will watch. I am Deep Entropy. Some of you already know who I am. I got a special show for y'all. I have two individuals here that I thought would be excellent for this particular discussion. Um, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we're just going to jump straight into it. Matthew, if you want to go first, you are more than welcome. The floor is yours.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Matthew Facciani. I am a social scientist in the computer science department at the University of Notre Dame, where I study misinformation, media literacy, artificial intelligence, and those types of things. And I'm happy to be here and talk all about it.
Hey everyone. For those of you that haven't seen me on here before, my name is Sydney Lindquist. I have my bachelor's degree in psychology, my master's degree in environmental education, and I love to talk about all things science. And I do also like to go into a little bit of misinformation, especially around climate change. So I'm hoping that we'll have a really interesting discussion today.
Great.
So, today's topic: why do we pour more into people who don't care about us versus the people who actually care about us? I asked that because I had to really think about it, right? I'm guilty of it. When you have like loved ones, family, folks that's been by your side for all your life, seen you at your worst, they tend to be the ones that we give the least to versus someone that does not give us not maybe nearly a fraction of the same. Why do you think that happens? Or is that
So you're saying like why are we focused on others even when it doesn't help us so much? Is that like the general
right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the context and what you're speaking about. I feel like a lot of people are focused on others, but oftentimes, I mean, I think sometimes it's actually the opposite. I feel like often we're so focused on ourselves that we don't realize that not a lot of other people are not as focused on us as we might think. There's this whole psychological literature on the spotlight effect and how we often think a lot of other people are thinking about what we're doing and worried about us, but in reality, everyone's kind of focused on their own stuff. So that's my initial thoughts to that topic.
I think we could also apply the media to this as well, because people seem to put a lot more effort into paying attention to the dramatic type of sources of information, kind of like what we were talking about yesterday, Mel, with how people are giving a lot of attention to that radio talk show host, even though she's saying things that are really disrespectful. People seem to put a lot of effort into, or put a lot of attention into people that don't necessarily deserve our attention. We're kind of seeing that right now with politics as well, where we have certain characters involved in our our government right now that get a lot of attention, even though they are not doing very good things to our system overall. I definitely think that we are very self-centered as a culture, and we also seem to gravitate towards other people that are also self-centered because I guess it's more entertaining, more in capturing for our attention. But yeah, my initial take.
I see. So yeah, I guess there's a micro approach is kind of what I was thinking about, is our like interpersonal connections. But then there's also like kind of the macro approach that you were addressing, Sydney, about as society, our information ecosystem, rewards outrage and attention in any format, and that often can mean we pay more attention to those who are not always being the most pro-social and helpful for everyone else.
Two things I want to acknowledge. First, I do agree with the self-serving. I think we've spoken on that so many times. It has to be true at this point, right? It comes up in every single subject, and sometimes the subject isn't even about anything to do with being selfish, but it always comes back to being selfish. One thing that I want to highlight, though, when I speak on one party pouring more into someone who's not pouring back into them, I guess from that point of view, I'm more or less talking about unrequited affection, or someone who doesn't know their self-worth and value. And so for whatever reason, they feel as if they overachieve and overdo it to impress or prove to somebody that hey, I'm here, but you're not getting any type of recognition or acknowledgement back in return for that. I think that's more or less where I'm leaning towards, although I can see what both of you are talking about.
Yeah.
I think there's also an aspect of distraction and overwhelm. I've been thinking about this recently, actually, because I've been kind of evaluating my own friendships and trying to understand why I give more attention to certain friends over others. And I've kind of been realizing that, especially for other people too, that don't really put a lot of thought into it, I think people collect friends where they don't want to feel alone. They want to feel like they belong. And so they hang on to any single person that they connect with, even minorly. And so we have a lot of people that are kind of overburdened, where they've made more friends than they have the capacity to maintain. And so people that are on the kind of receiving end of that friendship, the types of people that are friends with the kind of like half-assed type friendships, will end up like, there's always going to be the dynamic of one person is putting more into the relationship than the other. And I think if you just try and make any friends that you can, I think you're more likely to kind of fall victim to that, because you're not putting as much thought into the substance. And so that person you're not going to have as strong of a connection, and you're probably going to be more willing to kind of put up with just being used, essentially. Like, we talk when we can, we hang out when we can, even if you're not actually getting the full relationship potential that you could get from them, the full support. So I almost wonder if the sheer number of people and number of things that we try and manage all at the same time can kind of prevent us from having those relationships that pour into us as much as we pour into them.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. In our digital world, it's so easy to connect to so many different types of people, and the relationships we can form might be more superficial, but are we fulfilled by having a bunch of superficial relationships as opposed to pouring in a lot of time into interpersonal connections with a smaller number of people? That's an interesting idea. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it this way. I have been on 1, 2, 3, 4. I've been on at least 7 different apps, and I've tried to connect on a various number of them for all the same reasons. Poetry. When I started using these apps, it was because I wanted to connect with other poets.
Mhm.
But the environment is different on every app. And when I got to Instagram, that's when I noticed that at that particular time before COVID, you could actually build some form of connection with people beyond just, oh, you like my post, so I'm gonna like your post back. No, you actually inbox them. You talk
Mhm.
with them. Like that's when I seen a glimmer of, okay, there's still some human like
Mhm.
attributes here. But then things kind of dwindled off a little bit. Now it's more commercial. You're seeing more ads. You're seeing more reels, and I go to Threads, and Threads is an entirely different world. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess it just feels wrong when you're not really organically being yourself,
Mhm.
and you're attempting to create something that is based on another variant outside of yourself. But I mean, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we have our digital selves, right? And we present ourselves a certain way. And it's interesting that we could even present ourselves differently depending on what social media platform we're using. Um, and also how those social media platforms change and evolve and how the people we interact with change and evolve. There's definitely examples of people who fall into this whole like audience capture, right? Like you post something, you get a bunch of likes on it, and you're like, oh, these people really liked it, so I'm going to keep posting along those lines and kind of alter who you are to keep getting those likes and get those that support, even if it's just superficial social support. It still can feel good in some ways. Um, so I think it's cool, like to think about the early days of social media too, and how that evolves. Like you were talking about, Mel, with like the more of the commercialization. I don't know if both of you were on the early days of Threads, but it felt more friendly before it got really big. And I think it's just like a common thing among social media platforms where the early days when it's more intimate and you can have like more personal connections and conversations with people without being bombarded with a lot of noise. It feels more real before it kind of expands into a noisy information overload type place.
I agree.
I noticed that on Threads myself. I joined in November, or I think it was more like September, because it was before the election, and then towards January, that's when I left Threads because I noticed that it was already starting to shift. The population went from like the artist community, the writers community, the educational community, and it started to collect a lot more of the people that were leaving Twitter and had that uh, raging red personality.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seemed to me that it got more unfriendly. And from the people that I see on Blue Sky that still have both Threads and Blue Sky, I've heard that it's still kind of like that, where there's still a lot more divisiveness now on Threads, now that people are starting to migrate over there instead. And I noticed a lot more people are starting to prefer Blue Sky to Threads, now that Blue Sky is starting to grow more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I think part of it has to do with like the community aspect where people all joined Threads in the beginning for a common reason. They're all trying to escape the cesspool that X had become.
Right.
But then that community started to get lost, as you said, as it started to grow bigger in population. And so then it became more diverse. And so there was more dissent between the group of people on Threads. So I think there's part of like a herding mentality that comes with social media, where like you're going to kind of be attracted to certain social medias based on your personality, based on your interests, because each social media is relatively made for different groups of people. And so I think that kind of contributes to that. Also, kind of speaking to something you said earlier, Mel, I think part of the reason why social media feels so vacant in comparison to in-person interactions is because with social media, you still have the conversational aspect, but you're missing that physical presence of a person, because the body does recognize that you're communicating over the internet versus in person, because when you're in person, you have body language, you have the other physical indications of people, like even the smells and stuff are important for understanding what is going on within the human. And to not have that, I've seen research that it can actually stress the brain out, because it wants more from the interaction, and it wants to understand the person more based on the things we typically give off through our facial expressions, our body language, our as I said, like the smells, even though we don't detect it logic, like in our consciously, our brain still craves it. And so it can leave these relationships feeling kind of hollow because it's missing some of those crucial components. And it can also build distrust for people because you're not able to accurately establish whether or not they're being honest with you, whether they're being forthcoming, and all the other attributes that we kind of desire in other people.
Yeah, and there's a lack of shared context, like you're talking about, like just being in the same place, you hear all the same stuff, you smell things, like you are in the same space physically. But when you're talking to someone, even over Zoom, like where it's close, it's like in between the text base versus in person, and you can get the facial cues, but you're still not sharing the same social space. And I feel like that really helps build a connection when you have that dialogue and you're actually physically present with the person.
If you had a friend and let's say they were overextending themselves in a situation with a third party who saw them, thought they were decent people, but they weren't decent enough to give to them what they were giving to everyone else. And they had a pattern of doing this. How do you talk to them? How do you go about letting them know without making it feel as if you're being condescending to them, right? Because nobody wants to be taken advantage of. Everyone wants to fit in somewhere. And the truth of the matter is we're not for everyone, but we get so caught up, and it's easy to get caught up because I mean that's how they got the system set up for you to be competing and wanting you to just fit in. So what would you say to somebody that is in this predicament? They're frustrated. They don't know, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting the results that I want from this? What is happening? What do you say to a person like that?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I guess ask them to think about what their goals are and what is not aligning with their expectations with these social interactions, and try to think about how they could change that. So if they are someone who gives too much to try to appease others, for example, um, that can be creating a vulnerability where other people will see that and be like, oh, I can always come to this person. They always want to listen to me, and I can just like vent and dump on them. And maybe that makes the other person feel like they're useful, but it can be really draining. So I think it's important to reflect on that and also establish boundaries. Like if you're trying to connect with different people and make friendships, but certain friends are maybe getting too much from you, then you can be like, okay, I can listen to you for this amount of time, but then I need some time for myself too.
Yeah, space is definitely one of the things I was going to suggest. Because when you are able to take a step away from relationships, from situations, it gives you the opportunity to kind of process everything that you've been thinking. Also, removing yourself from a relationship space wise is a really good way for you to evaluate whether you want to be in the relationship or not. Because oftentimes, if we are associating with that person frequently, it can trick us into thinking that we want that person to remain in our life just because we've become acclimated to them being around. Our brains really like habit and things that can be predicted regularly. And if someone or something is in our life and it's present it currently, it can be very hard for our brain to decide that it can, like, our brain's basically like, I can't live without that thing. So it's kind of like the same thing with like decluttering or something like that. If you want to get rid of something, you put it aside, put it out of view, and that can help you determine if you want to actually come back to that thing. And so I think people can apply the same things to their friends. Like, who are the friends that you think about when you are away from them? Like, who do you like? Oh man, I really want to hang out with this person. Like, and then also you can kind of get to see who reaches out to you, because I think that's a huge indication is people that are willing to actually take time out of their lives to give to you, because that's, in this day and age, that's a really deep honor that I think people have kind of lost sight of, where if you're willing to give up your time to somebody, you really care about them, because time is one of the few things that we can't get back, and it's in quite short supply with how busy our lives are today. And so if somebody cares about you enough to actually take the time out of their day to visit you, call you, write you, whatever they're doing, that's somebody that's worth pouring into, because as long as they're like treating you correctly, that's something that's hard to come by, people that are willing to actually give you their time. And so, yeah, taking space away can do a lot of wonderful things in terms of helping you understand what you do actually need in your life. And then also, just being honest with yourself, honest with the person, understanding what you actually need from your relationships, because everyone's different. You have different personalities, different needs. Some people have lesser needs for socialization, some people have more needs. And so, by truly understanding what you need from yourself, what you need from people around you, it can help you better understand who is best to keep around, and who are the friends that are worth keeping, or family members who are worth keeping around.
Both articulate. I agree. I agree 100%. Um, right now in 2025, we need more people to be honest with each other. Um, we need more transparency. it's just sad to watch, and it's mostly for me because there's something inside of you that is just as special as the next person, but for whatever reason, you might feel as if you're being like snubbed out, or your light is not getting as much shine as the next person, and that's a lie. It's just you said earlier about asking them if they have anything that they are focused on, like a purpose, or are they going after any goals, or do they have any ambitions. You might want to put more time into actually figuring out what it is that you enjoy doing, because I think that if you did that, the likelihood of you being centered around the appropriate people would probably be higher than you going outside of yourself, chasing everything else. Trial and error. Let's call it trial and error.
Mm.
I lived and learned it, and it don't feel good at all. So, um, any last thoughts? Anything that y'all want to say before we close out?
It gets me thinking about like some of my work studying, information and why people do what they do, what they believe, and I wonder if there is a desire to share things that are not true or lack transparency because you have this deep need to try to fit in with a social group. And that in your mind, it takes precedence that I really want to connect with this person or this group. And maybe that means you're not going to be as honest or transparent. And it's like if we can support each other and build each other up, then maybe we can facilitate spaces where people feel more comfortable being honest and transparent to the people they're connected with.
That's something.
Normally,
Oops, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead. I was waiting on you to pick up, and then there was like a little pause, and then I was gonna go. Go ahead, you got it.
I had it on mute. um, I was going to say something very similar to what you said, Matthew. One of the things that I remember from my research into climate denial is one of the things that motivates people to, or what draws people towards misinformation and like the conspiracy theories and all of that type of misinformation. Largely people are drawn to that because of the community. They feel like they're brought into that community where they might not be welcomed in other spheres. When I was investigating white nationalism and where the desire to join these very problematic organizations is because they've been ostracized by society. They've been pushed out. They've been seen as like for various reasons. They're either delinquents. They might be. They just have like a really interesting personality, or they might be interested in like things that are kind of. I'm totally blanking on the word, but like the outsider type of behaviors. They found community with each other because they can be outsiders together. And so people that feel that they're ostracized, people that feel like they don't have community, tend to be more likely to fall for scams, for MLM type things, for these types of groups that try and draw them in. And so I definitely do think there's a huge element of being connected and feeling like you belong somewhere behind our interest in both people that don't care about us and organizations that don't care about us. Because there's a lot of organizations that like to push their narrative by saying like, you belong here, you're with us, we care about you, we want you here, like the predatory type churches, the as I said, like the white supremacist type organizations. Even the N Party in Germany, they used social stigmas to kind of encourage people, like, if you don't join us, then you're one of those people. And it's a very powerful it's a powerful way to entice people. Wanting to belong is a huge need that gets neglected in a lot of people, a lot of cultures, and especially one like we have in America, where we're hyper individualistic. We want to be able to do everything by ourselves. We want to be able to go off on our own and be like cowboys in the middle of the Wild West on our own adventure. But we're not built like that. Humans need social connection, social network. And so, yeah, as I said, we're more likely to fall victim to these types of people that are preying on that sense, that need for belonging.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of gems, man. A lot of gems. This could have went on a whole nother hour for real, for real. But I do want to say thank you for one taking time out of your day, Matthew, to sit up here and have this conversation with us. It's more for the viewers and somebody, like, I always feel as though every word matters, and it might be one person that needed to hear something, and you might have said something that they needed to be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I need to think about that a little bit more. Sydney the same way. And so I love this. I live for it, you know. So um I appreciate you for coming up, man. Love to have you again. Sydney, you already know the vibe. I didn't get to do the soundboard today. I next time you'll see. I have a thing. I love my soundboard. It's just kind of acting up right now, but appreciate you both for tapping in, man. Let the people know how they can reach you one more time before we get up out of here.
Sure. I'm active on Threads and Blue Sky, just my name, Matthew Facciani, and also Instagram. I have a newsletter and a podcast called Misguided. And I have a book coming out also called Misguided, all about misinformation and the social science behind why people believe misinformation and what we can do about it. So yeah, I'm out there, and thank you so much for inviting me on the show. It was a lot of fun talking to you both.
Absolutely. I hope to have you again. Misinformation is a big issue right now, so we definitely need to get the word out about it. I really appreciate you joining us. I'm glad I was able to connect with you on Blue Sky, and I hope to talk to you again, because this is really fun.
Yeah, sounds good. Happy to come back.
All right, awesome.
All right.
Well, good luck with your book, and I hope you have a good afternoon.
Thank you. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.